Louisiana State claims that they are not land grant, they are sea grant. I have no idea what that means. Michigan State, of course, established a campus in Dubai in 2007, was confronted with the economic downturn. After 3 years, only in 3 years, 100 undergraduate students and 24 faculty and staff were affected by the closing of programs in business, media management, computer and electrical engineering. Michigan State had planned to attract 75 to 1,000 students in 4 years. But the university closed all its programs except for human resources, a master's level program. Before coming here, I got on the phone and talked with the office that was responsible for this program in East Lansing at Michigan State. The director was not in the office. The associate director was a young woman, probably in her early 30s, who was very chatty and gave me a lot of information. She claims they lost $6 million in 3 years. Right? Another example, one that I know a lot about, my institution where I came from and where I'm going back to after this year is Cal Poly. Now, Cal Poly is part of the California State University system. It has a claim to fame in engineering and architecture. 2007, it was approached about helping Jubail University College in Saudi for starting an engineering program. And when we had these discussions, I talked with the provost at the time and said, you need to pay attention to 3 issues. Funding, are you going to make any money? Security, can we get insurance? At that time, there was a travel warning through the US State Department. Can we get insurance for faculty who go abroad? And finally, public relations. I said, we're going to get killed in the press. And he looked at me and said, John, we have it under control. Within 1 year, he was fired and the Dean of Engineering was fired. The protests on campus were enormous. The media campaign was not pretty. The local media and the statewide media attacked Cal Poly for wanting to have a partnership with the Saudi Arabian institution. They attacked it for segregated education, the treatment of gays, the treatment of Jews. 2 of the photos in the press, on the one on the left, Cal Poly is known for education, picture of Osama bin Laden with a Cal Poly engineering t-shirt, and that appeared on the front page. University President Warren Baker, another picture in the press, training tomorrow's terrorists today. What was interesting was the provost said, John, let's have a teach-in after the protests emerge. We're talking about hundreds of people shutting down faculty meetings. We're talking about cameras everywhere on campus. We had a teach-in. We had people who had backgrounds with higher education in the Arab world. 15 people attended the teach-in. 400 and 500 people attended the protest. Later on, there was a group of investors that approached Cal Poly about starting a campus in Dubai. And at that time, the university said, not on your life, okay? But again, there were noble intentions, I believe, all right? But because of the protests, because of the media campaign, and ultimately the university was not able to respond in a fashion that they could. Third example, obviously, Nyu and Abu Dhabi. Now, of course, they've had an advantage. Significant funding from Abu Dhabi. Some sources claim up to $100 million, NYU Abu Dhabi from the get-go. In the first semester, they had 150 students accepted to campus, and they have an approximate equal number of students who have enrolled in each semester. What happened just in March? University President John Saxton has been criticized for establishing global campuses in Abu Dhabi and Shanghai, and for his goal to create 16 other campuses around the world. And in response to this global initiative and his expansion plans in the city of New York City, Sexton just received a vote of no confidence in mid-March because of, quote, his inability to communicate and convince faculty of the merit of these ventures. So what I want to do is suggest what are the things American universities need to keep in mind when they establish partnerships or programs in the Gulf. And I'm basing this on looking at the landscape. I'm basing this on conversations with failed programs and the administrators of these failed programs. I'm basing this on my experience with international education. Very briefly, funding. you gotta make money. I have a colleague who directs international education for the California State University system, and he says, what you really need to talk about is you gotta know who is paying for lunch. And what I love with international education is you have two sides, two groups who are having conversations from country X and country Y. And they have this little jig, you know, this little conversation. But many times, initially, they never get down to who's paying for what. There's nothing wrong with the university saying we don't want to make money on this initiative. It's not very realistic, however, in this day and age. So unless you're KAUST in Saudi Arabia or NYU in Abu Dhabi, you better know how are you going to make money. And my experience has been assurances about funding, qualified students, and in-kind support in many cases are optimistic projections, and that's all they are. Another issue, faculty and staff buy-in. What you often have is university administrators traveling abroad and signing agreements. And sometimes faculty have no knowledge of what agreements are signed. You also have programs where they need to send faculty abroad. And in certain cases, you have two types of faculty who will go. Senior faculty and junior faculty. And then you have a whole lot in the middle who have families and children who are unable to go. So you need to really figure out what is the faculty staff buy-in. And sometimes, I think this university is a good example. They talk, AUS talks about study abroad. Upper level administration is very happy about talking about that. I can tell you for a fact that there is quite a bit of the mid-level administrators who do not think it is a priority. So you can have provosts and presidents talking about this all the time, but what is the actual buy-in in the administration building and in academic departments? And not only what is the buy-in today, but what will it be 5 or 10 years from now? A third issue, public relations. You know, U.S. universities will inevitably have discussions about human rights in this part of the world. Some universities attempt to quell the uproar by saying, you know, by being there, we want to assist them in this transition. The problem, of course, is that if we have this litmus test about universities that U.S. campuses want to trade with, other countries of the university also have litmus tests. And they can ask questions about human rights issues in the U.S. Okay, so I think the discussion about how to handle public relations is very important because it comes up all the time. And it's really the issue at Cal Poly why these initiatives were shut down. Security. You know, we can debate the issue of safety and security for students, faculty, and staff in the Gulf. And obviously some countries are safer than others. Some regions are safer than others. But U.S. universities must be able to respond to perceived and real concerns about health and safety. So for example, if a country is on the U.S. State Department travel warning list, ensuring those faculty or students who go abroad can be very expensive, and there are lawsuits that are waiting to happen. So risk management should be discussed early and on a continual basis. Academics. You know, we can talk in the U.S. about the decline of interest in the liberal arts. And as we know in the Gulf, it's even more pressing. You know, parents make decisions about children, and we know the ranking. Medicine is number 1, engineering is number 2, probably business is number 3. We realize that universities that focus on the humanities or have humanities and social sciences and natural sciences, in many cases they exist because of general education. I mean, if you look at AUS and you look at CAS, there are only 2 departments that have a significant number of majors: mass communications and international studies. I'm head of the English department. We have 30 to 35 majors, and we've had that since the start or the beginning of AUS. So it is a tough sell. Also with academics, we have to pay attention to the issue of accreditation. Obviously, AUS is a good example. You not only have accreditation with the Middle States Association, but with the UAE. And Americans coming in have no idea about the labor-intensive activities associated with accreditation. So before I came here, they said, do you know about accreditation? I said, sure. Dealing with California with WASC, you write up a 20-page report for a graduate program, you meet with the accreditors for an hour, they meet with a couple students and faculty, you're good to go. We just did the accreditation for the MA-TESOL program here, 450-page document. The accrediting team was here for a week. it's not a little more activity, it's a lot more activity. And what do you do in certain cases when accrediting bodies, such as the Middle States Association and the UAE, differ in what they expect? Shared governance and academic freedom. Certainly since the Arab Spring, yeah, there have been some changes. At the same time, I think we have to be honest that many faculty have little experience with individual liberties and particularly participatory democracy. So institutions in the Gulf must determine whether shared governance is desirable, and if so, what form should shared governance take? So creating an academic senate or review committees with various levels of hierarchy may or may not work. Also, certain issues may or may not be allowed to be explored with teaching and research. We find the same thing in the West. Universities, obviously in the US, have caved in sometimes due to government, corporate, or donor interest. So as financial backing from Gulf states influence Western or Western-style universities in the region, in a similar fashion, economic forces shape decisions made by US universities. Preparation for the workforce. I think American universities and campuses in the Gulf run the risk of being ill-prepared to assist their graduates in employment for the region. These students must possess linguistic, cultural, and discipline-specific knowledge for both the host country and the US. So yes, Gulf universities often require a general education course in Arabic history or culture. Is this enough? And I think the answer is no. We need to do much more in giving students particularly the necessary language skills to survive in the country and in the region. So concluding remarks, opportunities exist for establishing new campuses in the Gulf, but pursuing these partnerships is hard work. Setting out on a trip, 1 or 2 trips to the region, is the easy part. Understanding areas of potential conflict and finding ways to resolve such challenges are much more labor-intensive. If you remember the movie Field of Dreams, and you have this Iowa corn farmer, and he hears this voice encouraging him to build a baseball diamond in the fields. And the mantra is, build it and people will come. In the Gulf, there are universities that have followed the opposite mantra. After people come, then build it. Clearly, numerous structures, physical, organizational, programmatic, and institutional, must be created long before students arrive, not after students are there. The Gulf has experienced rapid economic growth in the last several decades. In response to these demands, we need an educated workforce. It's interesting, right now, in the UAE, there are about 40 international campuses. 40. In the 1980s, there were about 40 international campuses, or American campuses, I should say, in Japan. And in the 1980s, I don't know if you remember, but in America we thought the Japanese are buying up the US. Pebble Beach is bought by the Japanese. The Japanese are everywhere, and American institutions need to be in Japan. Today in Japan, there is one American university that is based there as a branch campus, and that is Temple University. Many of the campuses have not survived. I think it's premature to write the history of American education in the Gulf. Education City in Doha appears to be a qualified success with participating institutions. And I think they're a qualified success for 2 reasons. A, they're extremely well funded by the royal family, and B, they offer what I call boutique programs. Carnegie Mellon, Business and Computer Science, Cornell, Medicine, Georgetown, Foreign Service, Northwestern, Journalism, Texas A&M, Engineering, Virginia Commonwealth, Fine Arts. However, in the UAE, there is, I think, greater cause for concern. George Mason withdrew from Ras Al Khaimah in 2009. Michigan State, of course, closed up their doors in summer 2010. Rochester Institute of Technology continues to have some struggles. Other institutions, such as the Australian Wollongong and Murdoch University, the UK Heriot Watt and Middlesex, and the French Sorbonne have also established campuses in the UAE. alongside universities from around the world. I think one campus has probably done a pretty good job is Wollongong. Wollongong has been in existence for about 2 decades, and they have grown very gradually. Campuses targeting high-demand disciplines and an emphasis on recruiting both Gulf citizens and expatriates stand a better job of surviving the economic downturn in the region. I think in addition, if U.S. universities want to survive, want to progress, they need to seek to establish a presence in the region, maybe not by establishing a university or campus, maybe by partnering with an established institution, perhaps by creating distance education programs, or by joining study abroad consortia in the region. The unavoidable question, of course, is about the sustainability of these campuses in the region. I've had conversations with administrators of terminated or struggling programs in the Gulf. Let me read to you some of their off-the-record observations. Quote, "We made some terrible, terrible mistakes." Or another, "It was a disaster." Or a third, "Make sure to hire smart." And my favorite, the fourth, "Avoid being arrogant." Such cautionary comments, I think, should remind us that U.S. universities should carefully consider all factors and consult with a diverse group of experts in international education and in the Gulf. Establishing campuses in the Gulf is a process requiring a high level of expertise and flexibility. While the potential rewards in teaching and research and service are significant, I believe that U.S. universities that enter blindly into these partnerships do so at great risk. Thank you.